Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. So what we have learned since doing this podcast is that successful freelancers have a business mindset and need to manage their finances. It sounds boring, but it's actually true, isn't it?
Actually not that boring. Like if you're with the right program, that is.
True. And the trouble with most financial software is that it's built for larger businesses, not sole trader businesses like us. So you often end up paying for lots of unnecessary features you never use, such as payroll. But our sponsor Rounded has software designed for freelancers, and it's super easy.
So easy and actually not boring. It actually becomes quite fun to reconcile.
The gamification, as you say.
Yeah, for sure. So good. Well, Rounded is really an all-in-one tool, and as part of the sponsorship, we've organised a saving of another 20% on any annual subscription. If you're a gold member of Rachel's List, that can really save you a chunk of change every year.
Absolutely. So good.
Lynne, I have a question for you. How much have you invested in your professional development over the years? Sorry if that's a leading question.
It's such a leading question, but you know, I and the reality is not much.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done I've been going to a few more conferences in the last couple of years, and I've done a couple of little online courses, but I'm bad at that. And I think it's my media background, because we were never encouraged to take courses.
No,
In fact,
I remember.
The only course I ever did in the whole 30 years I was a journalist was learn how to use InDesign. And that was obvious that the company had a reason to do that so we could do our jobs. But no, it's something I'm working on. And I do think that every time I do it, I feel good about it. And I think I should do this more often. Yeah. So what about you?
Yeah, I have started to do more of it. I really agree with you that it's such a mindset that journalists have. Not to train up or upskill or whatever. We almost want to rely on the initial training we had and that's it. I don't know.
I actually did my MBA when I was a journalist still, when I was an editor.
That's right, yeah.
And my publisher told me I was getting above myself.
I remember you telling me that.
So the MBA was obviously the biggest thing I've done. Yes, but I do remember that.
It's so good though. I find everything that I do, because I started off with low cost stuff and then I've moved on to super high ticket training that I really saved up for. I think it gives you confidence, really a massive boost, and it propels you to the next level in your career. And the obvious thing is it gives you the ability to charge more. And that's why we're bringing on comms consultant and writer Helen Dehen, who's big on upskilling and budgeting for it. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fascinating conversation for anyone who's thought, should I buy that course, attend that conference? So why don't you introduce Helen and we'll get started?
Love to. So Helen Dehen is a communications consultant and writer working with non-profits, government agencies and for-purpose businesses. Prior to moving into communications, she was a TV news producer and reporter for 15 years, working at SBS World News, 7 News Sydney, the BBC in London and Sky News. Wow. When her twins arrived during COVID, Helen knew it was time for a life beyond newsrooms, which led her to launching Hydora Lane Communications. And she's now worked for clients including Australia for UNHCR, the Green Building Council of Australia, and the National Regulator for the vet sector. Welcome, Helen.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel and Lynne. This is my first ever podcast.
Oh my God, you're a podcast virgin.
Well, there you are. It's all about growing and learning, isn't it, Helen?
Yeah.
You've had such an interesting career journey. Do you want to talk us about how you started in TV and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, well, TV was never anything I'd ever thought of doing in my entire life, but I ended up doing a Masters of Journalism at UTS in Sydney, and I did a TV elective, and I just really liked getting out and taking the camera with me and seeing people face to face and not just being on the phone all the time. So that sort of prompted me to send a few emails around to a few different newsrooms in Sydney. And about 6 months later, Sky News got in touch and gave me an entry-level job. So I worked out of the Channel 7 and Channel 9 newsrooms for them and just really worked my way up from there. So I was at Sky for about 4 years, ended up setting up the Adelaide bureau for them, based out of the advertiser newsroom. Then I went to London and worked at the BBC, which was amazing. And then I came back and spent about 7 years freelancing between Sky News and SBS, so as a reporter and a producer. And then at the start of 2020, so when COVID hit, I got married and I very quickly fell pregnant with my twins. And I just had a bit of a midlife crisis, so to speak, around that time. And I thought, what am I going to do with my life? I sort of felt like I'd done my dash in the journalism space at that point, or at least in TV journalism. And the timings really didn't line up with daycare because my husband was also in TV at that time. And so I thought, what am I going to do? I didn't want to go into offices. I sort of had an allergic reaction to the idea of going and being somewhere 9 to 5 in an office. So I thought, well, I'll start my own business. Easy as that, right?
Totally.
That'll be easy. So I remember saying to my husband, I better get a website, which just seemed like the most extreme idea at the time. I just hadn't done any of that ever in my whole career. But then fortunately, an old colleague at SBS was working at Australia for UNHCR at that point as the public affairs director and asked whether I'd come on board for an interim period as their PR manager and then as content producer. So that was amazing. So I did about 9 months there, which really got me into that communications world. And I learned so much in that job. And a lot of what I learned in that job then helped me launch the business and sort of bridge that gap between journalism and communications and sort of got the money starting to roll in so I could make some of those early investments as well. So I did that for about 9 months, and then they've been a really good ongoing client for a few years as well, which has really kept things afloat.
Nice.
My first like ongoing copywriting client was Tourism New South Wales. And that was like a cold calling thing. And I basically went and met them for a coffee and they hired me as a freelancer. And that was pretty much as soon as I, left magazines and started freelancing as a movie reviewer. But I needed something to plug the gaps. And it's great, those early clients that last for like a decade or something like that.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. That anchor client makes a big difference.
I think it does when you're starting out. Well, Helen, you and I have talked about how you're a big believer in learning and upskilling. But back when you were starting out, what did that look like? Were you sort of seeking out all the free stuff and the resources that you could, get for nothing but still learn that way?
Well, when I started out, I just really had no idea. Like the two of you said earlier, Rachel and Lynne, as a journalist, you don't really realize that avalanche of resources that are available.
Yeah.
There's just so much coaching out there and courses and programs and ways to upskill, but I didn't know about any of it. So when I first started thinking about starting this business, the instinctive thing that I did, which definitely paid off, was just calling around my old network. I had a really strong network across those newsrooms, and a lot of those journalists had moved into communications. So I wasn't really calling around to get a job, but I was just calling around and saying, what was the move like into communications? I spoke to a lot of people who had made the transition while they were mums. So that was a big thing for me as well. So how did you make that leap? Some of them had started small businesses, even for a short period of time. So that was initially what I did. And I definitely have gotten a lot of referrals and work and got a lot of information from that process. But then in terms of being sort of introduced to that more formal world of learning and investments, that was really podcasts. So I'd walk my kids every day at 4 p.m. They'd fall asleep in the pram. And I just found myself going into this world of business podcasts. So I think it's Steph Taylor. Her first podcast was Socialette. It was a very popular podcast for a long time, all about business and marketing. So I would listen to that, and then I'd find guests who'd been on her podcast and I'd listen to those. So Bernadette Schwert has her podcast, So You Want to Be a Copywriter. So that sort of introduced me into the worlds of copywriting, the Copywriter Club, which is a US podcast. So I just listened voraciously every time I could get a spare minute here or there, but it was all absolutely free at that point.
Interesting.
Because there is this whole notion about, when you're starting out and you don't have much money coming in, it's a bit of a struggle. So you don't want to spend money, but you're also charging low rates to get clients in the door. Do you think that too many freelancers stay in that sort of struggle street state too long?
Yeah, it's a real conundrum, isn't it? It's like the chicken and the egg. Do you think, do I put money into this with the hope that it's going to bring money back? But obviously when you have, especially in those early days, for me, I was on maternity leave. We were living on one income. So I didn't really have the cash flow to be putting into a lot of courses. But at the same time, I did realize pretty early that I would need to invest at least some money, as all business owners do. So getting that ABN, I built my own website on Squarespace. So it was a few $100s, obviously, to pay for the platform for the year. My mum took all my photos because she's quite a good photographer, but I paid someone to do my hair and makeup. So it was those early sort of investments that I made. And I also remember having quite a strong realization. So I'm a big saver. So I don't really spend money on clothes or those sort of things. But I'm also a big investor. So I like to put money away to invest in, say, companies to sort of build that long-term financial security. And I had this big realization one day. I thought, well, I'm investing in these other companies. So why not invest in myself? Why not back myself so I can create this business that will last more than a couple of years? And then when the kids ultimately go to school in 5 years, I will have something and I will have built this runway so I can do this more long term and have that freedom and flexibility. So yes, I wasn't putting huge amounts into it, but I thought I do want to make a real go of this. And I don't want to be sort of going around in circles and languishing and wondering what I could be doing. I want to pay to play, essentially.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's so, so smart. And it's definitely not what I did when I was starting out, because you are on that struggle street and you do kind of think, oh, I'm just going to learn all this myself or learn as I go. But I think there's something to be said for investing in the right things, being really strategic about that and pushing yourself to the next level. So tell us about the first big investment that you made in your professional development after you started freelancing and what it did for your business.
I would say, I think the first big one that I remember sort of hitting buy now, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Was Bernadette Schwertz's copywriting and business courses. So up until that stage, I'd sort of spent $150 here, $200 on those quite low ticket offers, where I learned about things like ideal clients and a little bit of marketing. But Bernadette's course was, I think it was only $1,200 or $1,300. So it wasn't a huge outlay compared to some of the things I bought since, but it is still a significant amount of money. So that had 3 parts to that course. The first one was copywriting. So it really got some of those early skills up from very much my media training and my work as a journalist. So that's been really helpful. But I would say what really moved the needle for me was the business side. So her talking about getting yourself out there, marketing, thinking about whether you're going to be a sole trader or you want to build an agency. So starting to think about those questions really early. So that was all a pre-recorded component, but it was the one-on-one calls with her. So the course included 2 one-on-one calls, and they really helped. So I think just having someone who could, I felt like I was a bit overwhelmed. What do I do next? There's so many things I could do to start this business. So she sort of broke it down into quite actionable steps in terms of reaching out to my community, reaching out to my existing network, and just, I think, also giving me the confidence, because I had quite an established career at that point. I'd done 15 years in the media. I had a good network. I had a good career. I had really valuable skills in the market, but it's really hard to see that when you're going into a new space. So I think she just gave me the confidence to put myself forward and know that I would be valuable in the marketplace as well. So I think that was money well spent.
We love Bernadette.
Yeah, I did one of her courses, a smaller course with Valerie Coos. It was at the Australian Writers Centre, and that was quite good. And that was more, I guess I had the basics of copywriting. It was about setting up a copywriting business, and it was about that business mindset. It was really helpful. Yeah. Now, we've seen you at both of our summits, the 23 and 24. And so I know you budget for conferences too, and they're big ticket items. So how do you decide which conferences that you choose and which ones have the best ROI for your business?
Yeah, I mean, conferences, they definitely are big ticket items, but I also do think that conferences potentially have the best potential ROI. And I think that comes, obviously you're in a space where you're learning and you are learning new skills, but it's really just the networking that you get from those conferences. And I have to admit, I hadn't really heard of Content Byte before I saw a post, because I was quite new in the business world, and I saw a post on LinkedIn from from someone else I'd met in the business world saying she was going to it. And I think I bought it within 10 minutes. I just thought it's so well aligned in terms of meeting other writers, in terms of the business skills, so the mindset, the pricing, the systems and processes. I could instantly see that it was going to answer potentially, and it did, answer so many questions that were percolating in my mind. So I bought that ticket really quickly, and yes, I've got the return on investment so many times over from that, just in terms of the network that I met at those events. I really felt like I was with like-minded people. I was with people who were going through the same challenges. So not just learning from people on the stage, but also having coffees with people between the sessions, meeting them at the cocktail party. And even now I'm having coffees with people I've met at those two conferences. And yet when the second one rolled around, I think I was one of the first people to buy
I think
a
you were.
I know. So yes, I could see the ROI on those ones. I've been to other conferences. I think for me, it's about being really specific. It's like with any courses or programs that you buy. It's about being really well aligned with the particular, either the community that you are part of or want to be part of, but also the skill sets you want to learn. So I've been to conferences for not-for-profits communications, for government communications, and they've been so valuable because I'm seeing what my potential clients are thinking. I'm meeting my potential clients at those conferences. It's obviously a fast changing landscape. So you're seeing what they're doing in terms of things like AI, for example. So yes, to spend a few $100s or to be in the room or more for a couple of days is just money well spent, I think. But I have been to some, for example, which are more targeted at agencies or corporates, which I found less valuable. So I sort of steered clear of those going forward.
Okay. You and I had Brekkie recently, and we were talking about a lot of the, courses and training that you've invested in over the years and that you felt had sort of fast-tracked your business. Talk to us about, some of the ones that you've bought into and what they've done for you. Because I know you had a big list.
Yeah, I did send you a big list. Gosh,
Yeah.
I feel like I've done everything. I've done copywriting courses, copywriting memberships. I've done training on, say, crisis communication, so craft skills that are quite specific. I've done AI training. I've done business coaching across all sorts of things like marketing, sales. I've done the whole list. I think the ones that have moved the needle for me have been ones that have led to me getting a better community or connecting with people in that space. So yes, again, like the conferences or the communities where, especially if you're in, say, a smaller group and you can really connect with people one-on-one within that. I mean, business coaching can be quite expensive. So I am a little bit wary of that in some instances. But I did do one with a lady called Emma McMillan, who you may or may not know. She had a podcast back in the day called Not Just About Copy.
We've had Emma
We had her on.
We've had her on the podcast.
Yeah,
a long time in the first few years. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's gone into full-time employment now, but I did a 3-month session with her quite early in business, and she was a copywriting coach, but she also just had such amazing business knowledge. So I think that was probably about $2,500, but I got such amazing return on that. So during the course of those 3 months, I rewrote my website, I created a lead magnet, I reached out to ideal clients, I got a lot of testimonials from my existing clients. So we did so many things within that 3-month period, which really laid the foundations for my business going forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those things have really moved the needle. And some of those have been more expensive and some of those haven't been that expensive at all. It's more just about having the opportunity to connect with like-minded people.
Absolutely.
So do you feel that if you hadn't have done all that training, you'd be earning less, you'd be in a different stage?
Gosh, that's such a hard question to answer. I would say if I look at it holistically, and I have to admit, I have spent several tens of thousands of dollars over the last few years, to put a number on it. I think that in terms of the clients that I've had, for the 90% of those came from my existing network, from my journalism network. So I think that was a really good start. But I think what I've spent in business development or learning these things has probably, I'd like to hope, have set me up for success. I think in terms of the money that I've earned or the clients that I've had, that's really come from my existing network. But I am starting to see, I guess, those shoots of growth from the things I have really invested in. And I could go through the list of everything I've spent money on and say, oh, well, that didn't really get me very far. But there's other things, for example, where it led to a referral, which may have landed me a client, which is paid many times over for what I've invested overall. So I would say that I'm definitely ahead, but yes, you do need to be careful and think about where it's getting you.
Yep.
Because it's not just about the skills that you pick up, it's that sort of referrals and getting access to a high value network and potential opportunities. It's that networking stuff that makes a difference. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of networking, I would say first and foremost, it's about authentically networking. It's about, you want to be creating friendships based on, whether it's like-minded business stuff or whether you just get along with person. I met a lady at a business thing recently, and we're both twin mums. So we instantly hit it off. We grew up in the same area. And we also just happen to have very similar careers and are heading in very similar directions. So it's just really nice to meet people like that. It's really nice to have coffees with people and, thrash out your business challenges and know that you're not alone and you're not just sort of in your twin's bedroom working during the day all by yourself. That said, of course, building those networks obviously lead to things like referrals and collaborations and partnerships, which can be financially lucrative. So I think there's the two-pronged thing, but I would always go in and try to meet those like-minded people. And if they pay off in the future, then that's brilliant. And I have seen, for example, I've been in courses where I've ended up with clients or I've ended up with referrals. That does very much happen very quickly.
I would love, without mentioning names, to talk a bit about the investments that you feel you've made that didn't offer results that you were hoping to get. We've all been there. We've all been there.
Yeah, I can definitely think of some investments I've made that haven't moved the needle, at least for me. But that said, sometimes I think of programs that I've been involved in and for other people, and I can very much see for other people in that course, they are getting their return. So it might be that it's more specifically aligned with their business challenges or the skills that they're trying to get, or it might be that they just have more time to invest in the course. So they have more time to ask questions and get feedback. They show up to the live trainings. So there is an element of that. And going forward, I'm going to be very careful where I think, is this going to make me be involved in a group where I'm meeting people who are having the same challenges, or do I have the time to dedicate to this?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say there are some occasions where you read the sales page and you think, oh my gosh, this is going to solve all my problems. And I'm going to be the best business owner. I'm going to have mastered this craft after, a $30 download or whatever it is. So sometimes it is a bit too good to be true. And I think that is something to be wary of. For me, for example, sometimes I see what people are charging for, say, an hour consultation. And I have to think, is this something I could figure out myself? Or does this person have the exact skills or knowledge of the industry on what I'm in, that their advice on, say, pricing or positioning is really valuable? Because it's on me if I go to a coach who's just not well aligned with the business that I'm in.
Yeah.
I would also say, I think sometimes I used to pay for a lot of those $30 or $50 downloads, so checklists, the sort of promise to get you from here to there. And I've stopped investing in those because I just think I may as well go to the library and get a book, or usually it's just a tripwire to get them into those higher ticket offers. So I've just sort of thought that for me isn't really worth. It may seem like a small amount of money, but it does all add up. So sometimes I do prefer to save up for those more high ticket offerings where I am going to really see the transformation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of those downloads, like those cheaper, maybe $30, or some that you might pay $150 for. I remember I paid something for a download with Laura Belgrave. She's very big in email marketing, but also does websites. And she did a website makeover kind of download. And it didn't really cost much. It might have been $100. Has been one of the most kind of interesting and useful that I have ever kind of invested in. It's really interesting because it just it taught you specifically how things changed and why they were changed. And it was just really, yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? Some things
Really
can.
interesting. And it does make me think of that saying, the transformation is in the transaction. So sometimes you think if you spend a lot of money, you think, oh, I'll spend $3,000 on this and they are going to transform my business. They're going to transform my life. Because you've invested in it, you're more likely to show up and do the work that you need to do to get that result. Whereas, yes, so you can spend $20, $30, $100 on something and just leave it there because it's not as big an amount of money. So, yes, it does come back to your own psychology and whether it's something you're going to keep dusting off and put it to use, and they can be really valuable.
Yeah, I think also, do you have a bit of a process about when you look at a course? What questions do you ask yourself? You sort of talked a bit about this. Do you get referrals from other people or look at Google reviews?
Usually I'm in a sort of stage of business where I think, so for the moment, for example, I'm thinking I really want to spend some time on business development and marketing. So obviously I've got my eye out for courses in that space, and I am trying to buy things that I think will move the needle in one of those many ways that you can in business. Yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker for a good sales page, although I'm a bit more aware of the techniques that they're using now to sort of get me in. So I'm coming at it with a bit more of an educated gaze, I suppose. Definitely now that I have more of business community that I can rely on, have started asking around. So if I know someone's mentioned to me that they've done a particular course or worked with a particular person, it is really helpful to be able to give them a call or send them a message and just say, what do you think about this? And often they, because they're in a similar space, they might have a good idea and say that is more for beginners, or that might be for someone who is further along in business. So it just gives you a really good sense of who it's being targeted at. And that's another thing, as I move along the business journey, what I would have bought 3 years ago is sort of irrelevant to me now, or it's a bit of a time waster. For example, if I buy a course where I have to go back and learn the basics of marketing and sales, sometimes it moves the needle, but sometimes I'm just procrastinating when I could just be taking action on those things because I already know the theory behind some of those things. I just need to go out and do it.
Yeah. I think that's so true. We've kind of touched on this, but not really. I think the biggest challenge when you invest in something to learn a new skill or change how you price your services is doing that work afterwards. So how systematic are you about taking what you've learned and applying it?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a trap, can't it? I do feel like I've bought some things and they've just sort of gathered dust. And then I go, oh, I've got to buy this next course because I feel like this will solve my business challenges and help me up level. So I do feel like now and I touched on it before, when I'm looking to buy a course, I think, what are the touch points within this that will help me make progress over the course of the program, whether that's creating certain things in the business, whether it's implementing things, whether I'll have the accountability, because I don't want to do a 3-month course and then think, oh, I've got this list of things to do. And then I never end up getting around to it. So I do think if you invest in something that's got that level of accountability, that's great. I do also bookmark all the courses that I've done, so they're really easily accessible. So if I'm thinking, I really want to work on my positioning and I'm tempted by another course or another program that helps with that, then I think, oh, well, I can go back to these other courses that I've already spent good money on and I can pull those up and do that work again as I reach that next level. So I do have a bit of a database of courses that I've invested in, and I do try to remember that I can go back to those. I don't need to keep buying the same iterations, different iterations of essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned to us off air that you're a big fan of being paid to learn. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you meant by that and how it's important?
Well, I feel like probably in terms of the business side of things, I've definitely learned a lot in those paid investments. But when it comes to learning the craft, I don't think there's anything better than just learning on the tools. So yes, I mentioned Australia for You and HCR. Some of my other clients who I suddenly find myself surrounded by fabulous colleagues. So I'm doing the work, but I'm also learning from them. They're investing in systems themselves that I'm learning about. So I find that the most valuable thing. And of course, you're earning money as opposed to spending money and doing all these things in your spare time for free. And it's not just what you get paid in those jobs, obviously. You're also getting the testimonials, the logos you can use on your website. So I think that is the best thing for jumping up to that next level. So every time I get a new client, to me, that is worth 10 courses in terms of getting to that next level in business.
I know there are probably a lot of freelancers listening who may have part-time gigs at companies. This would not have occurred to me when I was in media because they would have just laughed at us. But I think a lot of companies now do have professional development budgets for staff. I know that Sarah Howard definitely does at Writers, and they might also cover relevant conferences. So is that something you should ask when you're going for those sorts of jobs? Also given we're in such a fast-changing landscape right now?
I think if they have a budget for it, I think that absolutely it's better to get them to pay for it. And if you can make the case for why it's valuable for them and you get the secondary benefits, then that's brilliant. And yes, of course, a lot of these organizations are looking to upskill their staff. So if you're in that more formal part-time setting, I would definitely be asking if they have the budget, but also coming to them with ideas. So there's this copywriting course, or can I upskill in SEO or digital marketing? And this is the return that I can bring to the company. You won't need to invest this money with an agency or whatever the case may be. So I think it's just about making the case for it.
That's a really smart way to get training paid for.
I've certainly had some trainings with some big projects on particular software. So sometimes they've used a software, like the first time I used Basecamp, which is not hard, but, they actually gave me an in-house training, hour thing. And that probably saved me a lot of time. And then I probably got more aware of some of the things you could do in Basecamp, which if I was learning by myself, it would have been slower and maybe not as effective.
Yeah.
Well, they're often at the cutting edge of systems or thinking in terms of ways of doing things. So it is really nice to be plugged in. And that's why I love working with some of my bigger clients, because I just feel like I'm learning from them constantly.
Yeah.
And it's helping me help other clients. So it's a win-win-win for everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think that too much professional development can be also a bit of procrastination? Like, I can't do this because I'm going to learn all about email marketing and then I'll do email marketing. And then, there can be some of that.
100%. I feel like learning, yes, it's a way of pushing back the scary things that you need to do in business. So instead of just posting on LinkedIn, I'm going to learn more about what I should post on LinkedIn, or how often I should post on LinkedIn. Whereas I often find myself in that situation where I think I have to sit down and be really real with myself. And I think I can invest $2,000 in this, or I can just sit down and get uncomfortable and do the things that I need to do, that I know I need to do, whether that's posting on LinkedIn, whether it's going through sort of a spreadsheet and doing some cold outreach. And it's the stuff that, I at least sort of tend to shy away from, but I know I need to do it. But yes, it is very tempting to just get another course because it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
It might just be pushing all that other stuff down the road.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you and I had an absolute ball in the Brain Camp community late last year, and I found it really, really useful being in that focus group with so many smart minds in copywriting. Do you think that communities and memberships can be some of the best things to invest in to grow your business?
Yeah, it's so funny. And I mentioned to you the other day, Rachel. So Brain Camp had been on my list for a few years. I think it had been on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah.
But when it came time to actually buy that course, I messaged Kirsty Fanton, who runs it, and I said, I'm not sure. I feel like I need more one-on-one coaching. Anyway, I made the decision to go into the program because it was the last time it was running. And before the course started, Kirsty told me that you were going to be in a Rach. And I just thought, well, that is so brilliant, because I haven't just got access now to Kirsty's knowledge. I've got access to Rachel, and I know that she's going to bring a lot of value, which she did. And that was just such a, yes, as you know, that was a small group. So I think there was
12?
about
12,
10 or
yeah.
group.
Yeah.
And it was so tailored. So it was mostly copywriters, small business owners. It was really well curated. It was very supportive. So they had the Slack community. And I felt for about 3 months, you and I were very active in that group, Rachel, but we're always asking questions.
Yeah.
I felt like I had this support system. And it wasn't just, Kirsty has, as I said, has amazing advice. She's got brilliant business knowledge and ways of breaking things down. But I would often write something in there, and Rachel or one of the other brilliant ladies in there would come back with ideas. And I was also learning from them. I was seeing their business challenges. So I felt like we really achieved a lot in that space over the course of those 3 months. And I think I probably did more than if it had just been a one-on-one setting. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was that community setting. Like I just wanted to bottle all those Q&As that came up in the group and everything. It was so, so valuable. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like you want it to go on, those really valuable communities that are quite short-lived, because the course ends and then you're off on your own again doing the thing.
Yeah.
Doing the thing.
Instead of going and buying another course to avoid doing the thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that.
Mm.
I'm doing the thing.
Good. Well done.
Yeah, there was something so special about that community. And that goes back to all of those things when you're buying something, especially when it's the community. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you are taking the chance. You have no idea. I had no idea who was going to be in Kirsty's group. I just had to trust that the universe she'd created and the audience she spoke to would be people similar to me.
Yeah.
So I took that chance and it paid off. But there have been other times when I've jumped into a group and it hasn't been as well aligned. And that's nothing about the other people. We might just be in different business stages. So you do need to really think through that carefully. But yes, that group was amazing.
We do love asking all our guests about their favourite digital tools. Now, I'd like to know, Helen, you've done so many courses and are there some that you've picked up along the way and that you would be lost without?
I feel like I'm very basic when it comes to my tools. I sometimes get things and test them, but the things that I just keep going back to time and time again. So accounting platforms, absolute game changer. I'm such a nerd. I like sitting there reconciling all my accounts.
Oh, Lynn's like that. She loves reconciling.
I think that's my favorite thing in business.
Yeah.
I can do it all the time.
Yeah, it's quite satisfying tracking your money, I must admit.
Yeah. And then like the profit and loss statements. And the best thing for me was the follow-ups with invoices. So when I first started sending out my invoices just from a Google Doc or from Microsoft Word, and then that stress of if they're going to pay late, not being able to, or having to chase them up. So I love that about the accounting platforms. Google Docs, so another really basic one, but I just use that all the time for the collaboration with clients. And the other one, which I've gotten into recently, is Notion. So I bought something from a lady called Anna McKenzie, and it's called the Career Portfolio Operating System. And it basically allows me to track all my client projects. It tracks my own projects within my business, whether it's setting up contracts or redoing the website or whatever it may be. It's got my daily to-do lists. It's got my leads. So it has all manner of things, but it's just set up really nicely. And that's something that has really worked for me in terms of having a platform to keep track of all those things.
Cool. Well, one last question for you. I know that there'll be listeners out there nodding along who are big on professional development, and there'll be others who simply can't afford it at all. What would be your advice to people who want to upskill and learn but don't have a budget and don't know where to start, maybe?
I think it's good to remember that we don't need to spend a lot of money to start out in business, and especially when we bring a lot of valuable skills into business in the first place. So we don't need to spend a lot of money upskilling in our craft necessarily. We'll learn that along the way. I think obviously the things I mentioned before, so getting the ABN, I think doing a basic website page, getting a LinkedIn profile. I mean, LinkedIn profile is totally free and you can tap into your existing network. Yes, something like podcasts, it might not be as curated in terms of taking you on that learning journey, but there is so much amazing and free content out there on podcasts, on books. It's all there. You just might need to spend a little bit longer curating it for yourself. Yeah. What I would probably put my money into if I had a limited budget, well, I mean, I have a limited budget, but if I was being really careful, is probably some really well thought through conferences where I could just start making some of those early connections. I think that is probably your best ROI.
Amazing. This has been so brilliant, Helen. Thank you so much for coming along and tell us where, our listeners can find out more about you.
I think my LinkedIn profile is probably the best place to find me, and always very happy to make connections with fellow business owners in the writing space, and my website as well, hydoralane.com.au.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thanks, Helen. Really interesting. I'm thinking about all the courses I should do now, so that's great. And that brings us to the end of the show, so thanks to everyone who's listening. And don't forget to leave a rating or a review. We've been getting a few lately, and it's really nice.
It is nice.
And we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's list, You can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.